Hello and welcome to Paper Plays Julie K.
Welcome everyone. I hope you guys are all doing well and safe and healthy. And today I decided just to pop on to do a little project with you guys. Yesterday I was feeling crafty but not necessarily creative, and so those days when I'm not feeling overly creative, sometimes I will just mass produce something that I can use and decorate later in my journals. I've shown these before on my channel. I've made these little pockets that I learned from like Crafty Irina, so sometimes when I'm feeling crafty but not creative, I'll just go ahead and fold a whole bunch of these. But yesterday what I decided to do, because I wanted to make a dent in my stash of 6x6 papers and some different things, I decided to go ahead and make some pockets that later on when I'm working in journals, I can already grab a pocket that I've already made and decorated it. So I have this huge pile of 6x6 papers that I picked up at a rummage sale. I got the whole bag for, I don't know, it was like 50 cents. And so what I did is I took a whole bunch of papers out of here and made pockets. And then this was also in that bag. So then I took a couple of the sheets out of here and also made pockets. And so here's the pockets that I made. And I did use my sewing machine for them. You can just see I sewed around the edges. And then, like I said, and then I also did a couple book pages. I have lots of book pages from ones that I've gutted, and so I did some of those too. So, like I said, I was feeling crafty but not necessarily creative, so I just went ahead and made a huge stack of them. Here's some more that I made from the 6x6 papers. And so later on when I make a journal, if I'm making like a purple themed journal, I can grab this one that I had that was purple and then decorate it up, or, you know, a vintage type themed one. So, and today I'm feeling just a little bit more creative, and down the road I really want to make an Alice in Wonderland themed journal. And so I did come across, when I was cleaning my room yesterday, some of the stuff that I had been saving to work on a journal. I found some stuff at a rummage sale that's kind of Alice in Wonderland themed, and I also bought the Stamperia paper. And I have a couple of smaller 6x6 pads that are somewhat Alice in Wonderland themed. This one's called The Looking Glass by Kaiser Craft. And this one's called Land of Wonder by Bo Bunny. And so I thought it would be fun to make and decorate one of those envelopes using one of these paper collections. To begin with, we're going to create a pocket very similar to this one that I made the other day. And to begin with, you're going to need a piece of paper. And so I did choose this piece of paper from the Land of Wonder collection from Bo Bunny. And the first step is to go ahead and fold it. And you do want to think about how you fold it. For instance, this one had some script writing, and I just wanted to make sure that when I folded it, that it made sense. This paper, what's nice about this one is all the patterns go all over the place. You know, there's hearts to the right, upside down, so it doesn't really matter. So that's what's nice about this one. And so the first thing you're going to want to do is just fold it in half. And you guys can use any size paper that you want. This one is a 6x6 paper, if you guys are wondering. And when I actually get to making my Alice journal, I will probably either use this as a floating pocket, or I'll attach it with a paper clip of some sort. And so now that I've folded it, I'm going to go ahead and take my corner rounder, just because I like my edges rounded. And I'm going to use the 1/2 inch on the We Are Memory Keepers corner chomper. And I'm just going to go ahead and round those edges. And then the next step is I do like to put a little notch up here. And it's quite easy to do. You can just go ahead and eyeball it and cut it out with your scissors, or use some sort of hole punch or a die cut. And so what I like to do is I will just take a ruler and I will find the middle of my page. So this one, since it is 6 inches, 3 is my middle. And I just make a little mark up at the top, just so I approximately know where the middle is. And then I just go ahead and eyeball it. I'm just going to cut out a little notch. And you can make it as big as you want or as little as you want. And I usually just kind of do about halfway into my punch. And again, I'm not too picky. If you are, you could of course measure both sides so that it was equal, but I just eyeball it and cut it out. So I have that. The next step, if you want to do it, but it's optional, you can go ahead and distress your edges with ink. And again, using different colors is going to give you a different look. If you wanted to make this really grungy, I could go around and edge it with black. I could also edge it with red and it would give it kind of a different look. I'm not going to distress any of my edges with ink today. I'm just going to use it as is. And I'm going to choose to sew around my pocket, but if you do not have a sewing machine, you would just go ahead and put a little bit of glue right here and right here, and then you go ahead and close it up, so then you can still use it as a pocket to stick something in. So next step again is I'm going to go ahead and sew. Okay, I am in my little sewing spot. The lighting isn't as great here, so I do apologize for that, but I figured I'd try and bring you guys with to show you how I'm sewing around the edges of my pocket. So again, here's one that I already created earlier. And if you look closely, you guys can see that I kind of did an overcast stitch, a zigzag overcast stitch, meaning that if this was my needle, it would punch right there and then it would go over the paper and then it goes back and forth. And so that's what I'm choosing to use on my machine. And so I do have a Brother Project Runway sewing machine. I bought it at Walmart. It works well for me. And so I am going to put it on to the right stitch. So for me, it's number 4. And I usually just let it default what it wants to do right here for the stitch size and stuff. I don't usually mess around with that setting a lot. And then as far as my needle goes on my sewing machine, I do use like a needle meant for like blue jeans. It's just a little more sturdier and it does have a titanium tip on it. And so I do like to, I'm kind of lazy, so if I can do all my stitches together at once, I go ahead and do that. So you don't want to stitch your pocket shut at the top, so I will start off with my paper being open. And again, I apologize for the setup. I'm trying to set my camera mount in front of me, so it's a very awkward when I'm going to be sewing here. But I did want you guys to see what I was doing, so I'm going to attempt to show you. If it doesn't work out, I won't put it on video, and hopefully I won't bump it at all. So again, my sewing machine is set for 4. And I've practiced this stitch a few times, so I kind of know where I need to have my paper. Then where I get to where this notch is right here, I'm just going to lift my little foot up a little bit. And I'm just going to end up doing that several times just so I can get around it. It's just kind of one of those things you just need to be patient and take it slow. So right there, I just lifted my presser foot and adjusted my paper just a little bit so that I can continue to sew along the edge there. And I'm lifting my foot again and doing that again. And again, the goal with the overcast stitch is you want one stitch on the inside of the paper and one on the outside. And to find out whether or not your sewing machine does this, you do need to read about your different stitches and just look for one that says overcast stitch. And so now I'm going to attempt to fold my paper so I can make it into the pocket. And so what I do is I put my thumb back here and I just hold the paper down. And I also lift my presser foot up. But I want to hold my paper down because I don't want to pull too much string or thread. And then the other thing you want to make sure is that when you do this, that your needle is outside of the paper. So if you were to look down lower, which I can't really show on the camera very easily, but if you were to look down at the same eye level, you'll see that my needle is outside of the paper right now. It's not attached to the paper. So then I'm going to go ahead and just carefully fold it on itself. And if it folds nice and goes back down, you know that your needle was on the outside. Go ahead and put your presser foot back down, and then I will continue to sew around the whole rest of the pocket here. So here's what we have. Again, it's a little pocket. And I think this is white right in here, and I do want to change the color of that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just grab a scrap piece of black paper. I could also use red, but this one's sitting on my desk from another project I had, so I'm just going to use this one. And I'm going to, and it doesn't have to be a full circle, but just using that same punch that you cut the notch out of, I'm just going to go ahead and I do have enough to cut a full circle, so I'll go ahead and just cut the full circle. And so I'm just going to glue that inside right there, and then I'll go ahead and cut it off. And I'm just using tacky glue, if anybody's wondering the type of glue I'm using. It's one of my favorite go-to glues. So I'm just going to put that right there. And you want to make sure, of course, that you haven't glued this part shut. And I'm just going to trim this top part of the circle off. I probably didn't need quite that much glue, but of course just use an old scissors for that. And I love my little tonic scissors here from Tim Holtz, and then I just wipe it off right away so that there's no glue on it. If you wanted to, you could also have glued down like a strip of paper right up there to cover that, or you could also, I could have inked it too if I wanted to. But I like that a little bit better, so it's not white right there, and it's still functional as a pocket. So now that we've glued down the black piece, I'm going to go ahead and decorate the front. And so I did go ahead and cut out a little sentiment that comes from Alice in Wonderland. It says, "Sometimes I have dreamed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." I also went ahead and cut out a piece of black cardstock that's slightly bigger than that sentiment. And I got that sentiment off of this paper collection. I think it's from Couture Creations. It's from a 2016 paper that was called Enchanted Tea Party. And I just picked up some of these pieces at a rummage sale. So I don't have the whole collection, but I have part of it. And that's what the back side of the paper looks like. So my idea is to put this here, and I want to put a sentiment across the bottom. But I'm going to add a little bit more color to this one, and so I did pick out some eyelash trim from my stash. And so I'm going to add the eyelash trim to the back of this sentiment. And I do like to just use tacky glue, and I do like to, it takes a little bit for tacky glue to dry, so it has a little bit of drying time. And it has a little bit of wiggle room. So I just go ahead and add glue all the way around my edges. And then I take my eyelash trim, and for the most part I just try to get most of the little hairs on it all going the same way, or close to the same way. And then I just lay it down on top of the glue. I know some people, I've seen people where they just kind of bunch it up and just put it in the middle of the back, and then it shows on the edges too, and that works too. But I just like this because it shows more of the eyelash trim. Your fingers do get a little full of glue, so usually after I work with eyelash trim and gluing things down, I'll go ahead and wash my hands. Or if I have like a wet wipe or something on my table, I'll use that. But I do love using eyelash trim, and if you follow my channel a lot, I do use a lot of eyelash trim in my journals. I do have a pretty good stash of it. I do find a lot of eyelash trim at the thrift stores, sometimes you can buy like a big Ziploc baggie, like a gallon size, and then they'll have 3 or 4 different skeins in there. So I can get quite a bit for a few bucks. And then my mom's also really good about, she likes to go to the thrift stores too, so she likes to find eyelash trim. So usually I tell her what colors I'm looking for, and then she buys it if she sees it, if it's a good price. So that's what it looks like. Then I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more glue to the back of it. And so I'm thinking I want to put that right there in my pocket. And then, like I said, I wanted to add a sentiment or something down here. And so, again, before I started recording, I went ahead and die cut out this word, Wonderland. And it comes from this die cut. It's called Diversions, and it's one of their edges dies, and it's called Wonderland. And that's the number DVE042. And so I'm going to end up trimming some of the sides off here of it. But I was thinking I would maybe go something like that. And then just have that stick right there. And then I'll still add one more embellishment somewhere. So I think that's how I want to do it. I'm just going to go ahead and chop off this part, because when I use some tape to hold down the die, and it kind of messed up my paper right there. It's kind of fuzzy. I picked up some of the cardstock, and I don't like that. I did that too on the other side, so I'm just going to cut that off. So I think I kind of like how that looks for now. And like I said, I'm going to add one more embellishment to this. So then what I'm going to just do is I'm just going to flip this way so that I kind of know where I wanted it to line up, and just very carefully add some glue again to the back of this. And then very carefully flip it up. I just was making sure I didn't have any glue on the back side up here when I flipped it over, just because I would have wiped it off if I did. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that down. And so on this one, I'm going to put a strip of tacky glue, just because I think tacky glue holds really good in my journals down there. But the tacky glue kind of has a tendency, it's kind of thick glue, and I'm worried about it seeping over the sides of my word. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to this glue just for the letters. And it's just a fine line adhesive tech glue. It's just a nice glue that has a fine tip on it. I know a lot of you guys have that Art Institute glitter with a nice tip on it. That would work good too. I just don't have any of that glue left, and my local craft store doesn't sell it. So I usually try and buy local whenever I can. And since this glue works just as good, I'm just going to go ahead and use this one. I do find this one oftentimes at Tuesday morning for $1, so it is pretty cheap when I do find it. Otherwise, I think I've seen it at our other craft store for about $3, so it's not overly expensive glue. Then usually I just take a paper towel to tap it down, just in case the glue does seep out a little bit, that it seeps out onto the napkin or the paper towel versus my fingers. So I think along the Wonderland, I do think I want to add something down here just to make it set apart a little bit more. And I had hoped, but I didn't have any like really small adhesive gems in black. These ones are kind of big. I wish I had smaller ones, but I do have some different white or clear ones that I could add on there just to make it stand out a little bit more. And so I think I'm going to do that. And when I work with flat back adhesives, they do come with adhesive on them. But unfortunately, I have found that over time they do come off. So I do like to use another glue with them. So I like Glossy Accents. So that's what it looks like so far. And if you guys are using the Glossy Accents like I did, it does take a little bit of time to dry. So you do need to be careful because these would still move if I go ahead and touch them. But it is a nice glue. The other nice thing about Glossy Accents is it dries clear. So like if I wanted to make the little hat here stand out more, I could put Glossy Accents over it and let it dry. You might need to let it dry for about 12 to 24 hours to get it to fully dry. But it's kind of a nice little glue. And I still think I want to add one more thing. And so I did pull out from my stash some different keys. I got these cute little stickers from Shonda. I had these little charms. It's actually from a wedding collection, but there's a couple keys in there. And then I have a bag of keys in my stash, and then little key locks too. And I'm trying to decide if I just like glue down some sort of, actually have real keys. Those are real ones. These ones are embellishments. If I glue down just a little key there, or if I want to do a key lock. And I kind of like both, so I don't think I can really go wrong with either. And it matches the paper. Like I said, there's some key locks or some keys on there. You could also, like this paper, you know, if you had a little die cut of a clock, that would be really cute too, or a teacup, because that's kind of Alice in Wonderland themed. I think I'm going to go with the key. And I don't know where these ones came from. I've had them in my stash for a while. And whenever like I open up something and it has keys, I just stick them all in the same little bag once it's been opened. So to glue the key on, you do need a little bit heavier glue, or glue that's going to work on metal. And I'm trying to decide, a lot of times I can use Glossy Accents to glue on small embellishments. Or else I use a product called E6000, and this glue works wonders on heavy objects. I use it quite a bit. It does stink. It smells really bad, and this is an industrial strength adhesive, so if you guys are sensitive to smells, I probably would not use this glue. And then the other thing about this one is it does take a while for it to dry. Again, you know, close to 24 hours. But I'm thinking, since this is kind of in between, it seems a little bit too heavy in my opinion to use the Glossy Accent. So I'm going to go ahead and use the E6000. Again, this is industrial strength glue. If for some reason you get it on your fingers and you can't get it off, nail polish remover does take it off. And with this, again, just a little bit goes a long way, so you don't want to put a lot on it. And I do know, I have seen some people who can buy this in smaller tubes. But again, if you're going to use it, it does smell, so make sure you have a well-ventilated room for it. But it is a glue that I do like to use, especially on mixed media stuff when I put down heavy objects. And so I'm just going to go ahead and glue this. So there is our finished pocket, and I will either end up using this as a floating pocket, or I will go ahead and attach it with a paper clip in my journal when I start working on it. And hopefully you guys were inspired a little bit by my pocket. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day. Stay safe and happy crafting.